Miami did miss out on a player that they were hopeful for. Tyler Williams, the four-star wide receiver out of Lakeland. He picks Georgia on Tuesday. Now, Georgia had been considered the favorite. It seemed like Miami was getting some momentum, and like, now that he's picked Georgia, and I know that, and you can speak on this, John. The recruiting never really stops until they sign. So I'm sure with a player like that, they're going to keep going. But it also looks like Miami is looking at some Plan Bs at receiver, and there are some good Plan Bs. A player that obviously I don't get to watch a lot, given that he's in Nebraska, but Malachi Coleman, who's a similar kind of build, a 6'5" wide receiver, four-star player. And what stands out about Coleman is he's incredibly fast. I mean, at 6'5", he runs a 10.46 meter. So, and he's making a visit to Miami next week. Where do you think Miami stands?
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a surprising development, but extremely timely for the Canes, right? A lot of these smaller slot receiver types are on board. You feel good about in general in terms of what Miami's recruiting. Two of them currently committed. So the perception is, what about the big guys? What about these boundary type of wide receivers? You swung and missed for Hykeem Williams as well as Tyler Williams. William Foles was maybe a bit of a different scenario, but certainly there is something to be desired from a recruiting standpoint with this body type at that position, especially watching, the current team at work. So I thought the timeliness of securing this official visit was really important for Miami with Malachi Coleman, and it's advantageous, right? He's not only from Nebraska, he's from Lincoln,
Yeah.
Nebraska. So this was considered almost a Cornhusker lock earlier in the year into the spring, and especially in the summer when he took his official visit to Nebraska. But obviously, since that point, Nebraska stumbled out of the gates. Scott Frost has since been fired. So now it feels like the door is a little bit open for Coleman, and a couple of programs are trying to make moves to get him on campus. Miami is going to be successful in that regard here going forward. I think Ole Miss gets him on campus here this coming weekend. So some interesting competition developing for Coleman, but that door in terms of his recruiting process feels as wide open as it's ever been, basically from the moment Frost got canned at Nebraska. Now, obviously, they're going to hire a new coach, and that coach will certainly prioritize the top talent in town. So that will be something to note later in the cycle, and it probably makes Malachi's decision extend a little bit longer than some of the other guys we'll talk about. But that's okay for Miami. This is a newer relationship. He's not frequented Coral Gables to this point. So getting an official visit right out of the gates after a sudden change in his recruitment, I think is really timely, especially considering what Miami needs at that position. He's basically a cut and paste of what you want and what you would desire at that spot. And a freaky talent, like you said, 10-4 for a guy who's 5'8", 5'9" is impressive. 10-4 for anyone is impressive. When it's 6'4", 6'5", it just goes into another stratosphere of wonder. If it wasn't for Nicholas Harbor, we'd be talking about Malachi Coleman as really the kind of the freakiest head-turning track guy in this class of 2023. So this is a big deal. Kid who's averaged a ton of yards per catch in Nebraska, whether he's a receiver, a tight end, some kind of hybrid in between. He's the type of prospect you certainly want in a new modern offensive roster. So yeah, you understand why Miami's gunning for him. And again, the door's wide open. So let the chips fall where they may after you get him on campus.